Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining and for watching. So, today we're going to be talking about something that I've been raising ever since our last meeting. So, today it's not just going to be about parents, everyone is invited, even though, of course, parents are closely related to the subject. So, if you know someone that should be on, that should be here, please let them know that we have started. The topic is, does it still take a village? My name is Biodun Friday, and I'm the founder of PIPO Network. So PIPO Network is basically Peace In, Peace Out Network, if you were curious about what it means. So tonight, we're going to be talking about, the whole saying, does it take a village? What the village has done for us, or what we think that the village has not done for us. So whichever way you're leaning, let us find out. So if you have not signed up for my email list, definitely check out beardedafraid.com at some point soon. But tonight, let's get into it. Feel free to drop your comments. Let me know if you have a question, and feel free to say hi now. Say hi whenever you're ready. Okay, so I'm not going to take too much of our time. I'm going to share some history. So, my name is Bearded Afride, and I am a certified leadership coach. I'm also a certified team coach. And I kind of stumbled into team coaching. I always thought I was going to be a leadership coach, right? When it became something that I saw as a path. But then team coaching, I sort of stumbled into it just based off on the fact that I struggled um, a lot as a teenager and as an adolescent. And I also have children of my own, so it began to raise some anxiety in me, and I was worried about, like, what was I going to do when that time came. Like, it really bothered me. So first of all, the Lord put me at rest as to understanding that I'm not the one who will be absolutely responsible for a whole human being's life, and that He would show me how to go about it. And somehow that path led me down to, studying more about mental health, taking more courses, getting into certifications, and all of that great stuff. And of course, I cannot even overemphasize the support that my husband has given me on this path. So shout out to him. Anyway, so we're going to jump into it. When I was doing some research about tonight's topic, um, you know, it brought up some things that I was like, "Ooh, okay." When people watch this or they catch the replay, how are they going to take it? But you know what? Everyone will be okay. So I was searching up, it takes a village, like, what is the origin story of that saying? And turns out it is actually an African saying. That is what the internet says. Look, I'm not the internet. I did my research. Feel free to do your research. But we all know that the whole idea behind it taking a village to raise a child is not just something that Africans understand or Africans know, right? It is something that is practiced in different parts of the world. But before we get into that, if you're watching, please say hello, say hi, let me know where you're watching from. All right. So I'll start off with the objective. What does it mean to raise a child? And I will come up from my own opinion and just experience. What does it mean to raise a child? And what are things people do to raise a child? So the opinions on what it means to raise a child, it differs. I feel like people think different things. Here for the juice from village people. Okay. Not for village people. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let me know where you're watching us from, what state, what country, what city. Okay. So, what does it mean to raise a child, and what are things that we do to raise children? I wanted to start it from there. So, let me know, please. I want to see your answers in the comments. What does it mean to raise a child? And people say raising a child. What does it mean to you? And if you had to mention two things that somebody raising a child would do, what would those two things be? Feel free to drop your comments because it's going to, support what we'll be talking about tonight. So one thing joins everyone together. Everyone who's going to catch tonight's broadcast, everyone who's going to watch the replay, one thing joins us all together, and it is that we've all at some point been children. We've all at some point required raising. And we're going to talk tonight about what it even means to be raised and what it means to raise. And let's start off from it takes a village. What does it mean when somebody says it takes a village? So it takes a village refers to a community. A village is typically known as a small community of people. So when there's a saying that goes, it takes a village to raise a child, what the source of this saying basically means is that it's going to take a community, a small community, to raise a child or raise a child properly. So please, I'm still waiting. Let me know if you had to mention two things that a person raising a child would probably do. What would they be? Two things, if you can type. All right, so like I said earlier, look, I'm not the internet, but the internet is saying that the saying itself is of African origin. I suspect that the saying it takes a village to raise a child, I suspect that it probably was translated from whatever language, right? And it has now become like a popular saying or a common saying. So in traditional communities, I'm not even going to say African now. In traditional communities, and by traditional, I mean where the community is very close knit, where they probably speak the same language, they believe in the same things, they have the same culture. In traditional places like that, it's not just on the parents to take care of their children. Everyone is responsible for the children. So nobody automatically feels like, oh, that child is not my business. That's the way it used to be. So our parents and our ancestors, let me go from here. Our parents found themselves plugging into an ancient network called the village. And through the village, they were able to raise us. So I'm not going to generalize. Maybe there were some people who didn't experience this. But typically, if you were born in the 80s, 90s, 70s, earlier, you probably had aunties, uncles, neighbors stepping to raise you. For me, I'm going to use my personal experience. There were aunties, there were uncles. Teachers were somehow considered part of the village. Religious leaders were considered part of the village. So if you're watching right now, let me know. What were the people that were considered part of the village for you when you were growing up? What was a person, or who was a person and that was considered part of your village when you were growing up? And then I mentioned the automatic village for me. There were people even not part of that close-knit circle that were somehow considered the village. Neighbors, somebody's auntie's auntie, some stranger on the street. They could just walk up to people and say, oh, I saw your child doing so and so and so. And, when they come home, you should ask them about it. And that was the time that I was raised in. If you were not careful, your neighbor could even come at you like with some kind of punishment because they saw you doing something that you shouldn't have been doing. So I am aware that for many people who were raised in communal circles, this was what they experienced. It has changed. Obviously, times have changed. It's not happening in that way, not exactly in that way. So right now I live very far from where I was raised. It's a different way of life, it's a different expectation. People act differently, and people kind of want to do their own thing. So, the idea of tonight is just us talking about is it is this change healthy for us as human beings, who were made not to be isolated, as human beings who crave community of some sort? Is this a healthy way to live with no village? So I see raising a child is about nurturing them to become functional members of the society, guiding them through the different milestones in their journey to become what God created them for. Thank you so much. That is true. To become what God created them for. So when we get children, or when people are born, they are born into a society they know nothing about. Their first introduction to that society is the village. That is what it has always been. Now we're shifting into a time where it's no longer the village. It is the internet. It is social media. It is the teacher. It is the people closest to them that sometimes we're not even considering as the village. They have somehow stepped into that role without wanting to be the village. And that's why this is such a big subject. In the time when some of us were raised, the village knew they were the village. They understood the role that they played. But now we're finding ourselves in a situation where people are stepping in, sharing their ideals, sharing their ideas, sharing things that they have maybe even no business sharing with young people. Coming from a place, doing village things, but not being part of the village and not wanting to take accountability for being part of that village. So how do we move forward? So I cannot talk about everything tonight. I know I have, very little time, but this is a topic that we'll be touching on in the future. So how did our parents make it work? How did our ancestors do it, right? They came from a different time. They believed in different things, some of them, but how did they make it work? And I'm going to list a few things and touch on that before, we close out. They made it work through shared responsibility. So, what is the idea of shared responsibility? The idea of shared responsibility is something that some people call I scratch your back and you scratch mine. Mm. But the whole idea of give and take usually stems from a place where people see the need, where they see the advantage of such a relationship. And they understood that. They understood that they would always need other people. They could not be isolated and properly raise children. They could not isolate and raise healthy children. And, it consisted of older people passing on their wisdom, their values to younger people. And it kept on going that way, and it kept on moving. You had siblings raising their younger ones. So that was the network that they built. Neighbors were their eyes and their ears. So anything that they missed, you could bet that some neighbor was going to tell on you, right? So for me, I definitely see how, and I see all these videos online now, and I don't know if you guys have seen these videos where people are posting about their parents who are now grandparents, the way that they act with their grandchildren. They're like, this is not how you acted with me. If I'd done this, you would have booked me quickly and everything. But why are you acting, so soft with this grandbabies? Guess what? That's their role in this time. While you are stressed and you're anxious about doing it right and doing it wrong, and they have reached some level of maturity where they understand that it's not going to be about worrying, it's not going to be about fear, it's not going to be about stress. It's going to take calmer heads sometimes. So they are that calmer head. It doesn't mean that you're wrong with your elevated voice, maybe not, but understanding that they being part of your village are coming forward with their softer voice. with their gentler tone, with a different tactic. And maybe in that moment, that is what the child needs. Maybe even for you, that is what you need, right? So the village was responsible for teaching life skills. The village was responsible for financially helping so many of our parents and grandparents the only way they could have gone to school, the only way they could have learned some kind of skill was because the village came together and they donated money. The village came together and, they made it happen. For some, it wasn't even money. For some, it was network. Somebody in the village knew someone who knew someone who knew someone in some other state or some other country. And they called them and said, you know what, I have this cousin, because we're all cousins, even when we're not blood related. I have this cousin and they need help. And then the village would step in and then they would help, right? So that was how it was done at the time. But guess what? Without the village, sometimes you can miss that. So those were some things I wanted to raise as sort of pros and cons when it comes to having community or, just deciding not to have community. So coming back to something that a pastor uncle of mine shared one of the times when I put up this post about this event, he said he thinks that the village is no longer necessary because the village has changed and the village is now digital. I would love to know what you guys think. Please drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think that the idea of the village has changed? Do you think that it is no longer possible for the village to work in, let's say, 2025? So we're going into a new year right now. Do you think we can actually have a working community like we did when we were growing up? So going back to the role of the village used to be a group that provided a kind of safety net for parents. So today, you see parents at work, they are stressed out. They send their kids to school with a cold. They know that they can be called up at any time by the school nurse. Come pick your child. And maybe they're like an hour away. They cannot even imagine being called, but they know that they have no choice. Who's going to do the picking up? Usually, in the times that I'm talking about, in the origin times, it would be the village. But in a situation where there is no village, who do you lean on? Right? So, what is the relevance of the village today? The saying, it takes a village, brings to mind that we will always need community. Will the look of community change? Maybe. So, for someone like me who is an immigrant, who has left like a whole network of people I grew up with, I knew since I was a child, and moved to another place, maybe, finding a village is going to take more work. The village is a community that aligns with your values. You can find your own village, or better still, create one. Thank you so much. So that is definitely something that is true. A village is something that you can create. What does this mean? What does it mean to create a village? It's a lot of work, but it is not impossible. But first of all, we're going to have to define to ourselves, like personally, what we think a village is. So this is not hearing from other people or, just taking it from because someone said so on the internet. What is a village? Like, what would we like our village to do for us? I've said all of this about community, what they're supposed to do, how they step in. What is the village supposed to help us with? I think that's important. And then again, it's important that we think, what can we offer the village? Because sometimes we are, yes, in diaspora, it can be a huge challenge, even among some cultural beliefs, except we become intentional with communicating our values or we create a village. Yes, 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 so true. So even in creating a village, which was what I was saying, it is important that we are able to communicate our values. But some people have not yet figured out what their values are. And it's okay. Like, it's not too late. Today is another day. Tomorrow morning you can start. Tonight, once we're done with this, feel free, get out your pad, start to write. What are my values? Like, what are my core values? What do I truly believe in? And what do I want to pass on as legacy to my children? Because I know that it works, right? One of my core values is respect. I fully believe that it is important and it works. I truly believe that respect can get you anywhere. It can open so many doors. But guess what? We're now living in a time where many people don't think that. In fact, there's almost a race for who can disrespect the hardest. Sometimes people make such disrespectful, disparaging remarks and they get applause. People are like, wow, you ate. That was so hard. Like, that was so dope. And people are praising the disrespect. And if we're not careful, we can get to a point where people almost even forget that respect is a thing. But for me, respect is a value, right? For some other people, it might be something else. So what is your core value? Because before you decide to say you want to build a village or you want to plug back into your village, you have to know what your values are. If you're bringing children around someone, they need to know, even if you're being fair to them. Like, if you're being fair to them, you must let them know, these are my values. This is what I communicate to them daily. Because if you communicate kindness, and there's someone in your village that they are spending so much time with, and that person is all about cruelty and how to get, and how to grasp and to leave people hurt, then there's a clash. That person can't really be your village. But is it their fault? No, because maybe you didn't let them know that one of your values is kindness, and that you were raising your child based on that value of kindness. So that's what I mean by, communicating values. And thank you so much for sharing that comment. So it's important to define your values. It's important to communicate your values. It's important to really review this person that you're thinking about making your village. I personally don't think everyone has to be part of your village. I believe that we can pull them in at different levels. We can open the door to them in different ways and judge them based on how they respond. Believe it or not, somebody can be your blood relative and they don't want to be part of your village in that way. They want to say hi, they want to say hello, they want to come in when it suits them, and they want to leave. They don't want the pressure of all of these value system, and shared responsibility, and all of these things that I listed in the beginning. They don't want that. They just want to come in and go. And if that is what they want, then you cannot force them to be part of your village. They are not ready, right? So communication is very key. Another thing, like I was saying, is just understanding who these people are. So I just mentioned someone who maybe you think because they're related or something like that, they should be part of your village. They're not interested. Another thing I think we make a mistake of is thinking that because we've helped someone in the past, they're automatically our village. Not necessarily. There has to be communication. Look, I have a friend who called me and said, you know what? I need an accountability partner. I am in school, I'm getting my MBA, and I want you to keep me accountable. And I said, okay, what would that look like? And she said, I want you to do this every week, this every month, da 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 da. And she said, in return, I can keep you accountable with, your book. You said you wanted to finish writing your book at so and so time. I can do so and so for you. If you have an accountability partner and you're on this call, drop a 1 in the comments. You have someone like what I just mentioned, that keeps you accountable in, it could be any area. It could be school, it could be work, it could be your spiritual life, it could be maybe a habit that you're trying to drop or a habit you're trying to form. If that is you, Um, please drop something in the comments. Okay, so we're going to move on. And then another thing I've noticed is that sometimes we give up on the aspect of the village because it's hard. And it's true. It is true. I mentioned earlier that as an immigrant, it is tough to even build friendships. Talk less of a village, a community of people that um, you can entrust your precious ones to. It's very, very hard. But like I said, communication is key. But even above communication, vulnerability, being vulnerable and letting them know, being vulnerable in the aspect of letting them know what you're really looking for, not thinking that they just get it. Being vulnerable and being honest to let them know, I've had this experience in the past. I'm not looking for this. This is my goal for my kid this year. And so and so and so is what I'm doing to make sure that it happens. That vulnerability can trigger their own, openness into understanding what you need and meeting you where you are. And finally, I think it's important to carry our children along, especially if they are old enough to understand. Understanding that the village cannot do your work for you per se. The village are meant to assist, but they cannot take on the core, aspect of parenting. Like sometimes we meet parents who say, you know what, I'm from the Caribbean and there is no home training in this country, in this first world place that we live in. And so because of that, I'm going to send them back to the Caribbean. I'm going to send them back to India. I'm going to send them back to Korea so they can train them. And I understand the sentiment of it because the person is thinking, okay, I have a village there. It's just like I mentioned earlier, especially when they're, migrants. Oh, my village is somewhere else. They can handle it. Maybe, maybe not. Some people have experienced terrible things because of that. Some people have had, good experiences. They can speak other languages. They are more exposed to the world. They learn new skills. But you never know. We need to understand that even though we can outsource to the village, we cannot outsource the core of what we do as parents. Um, I think that we still need the village. In what form, we'll all have to decide, but we will need a village, and the village has to be empowered. The village has to be encouraged, and our own children need to be told what our values are and what we expect. We also have to lean into what we are teaching. I've come to find that as we are teaching our little ones about life, we're teaching ourselves because sometimes we need reminders. You know what? I just remembered something I thought I was going to share tonight. When one of my kids was like very young, I mean, a baby, I'm not sure he could sit up at the time. He couldn't sit up. I remember getting to the hospital and the doctor is like, "Oh, okay. So from now on, lay him on one side, on so and so side of the bed." And she showed me, and I was like, "Okay, why? Why does he have to be on that side?" And she's like, "Because you obviously are laying him on the other side." And I was like, just staring at her. I think because what she was saying just came from left field. I wasn't expecting it. And she was like, yes, because can you see his head? His head on one side is flatter than the other. And then I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, it was true. It was completely true. And she was right. I was laying him on the same side, which happens to be the same side that I lie down on. But just instinctively, I was doing it. And he was always lying down that way. And it had started to happen to his head. It was true. But guess what? I didn't see it. I did not see it. Nobody at home saw it because we're so used to doing that. It took someone outside. And that's what I mean by the vulnerability as well, being open to hearing other people's opinion. So for a head, it was kind of obvious. We just didn't see it because, baby stress and all of that. But what about other things? Some people are watching children or people that they know, going the wrong way, but they're scared. They can't tell them. They want to be the village in in that aspect, but they're afraid. They don't want to be called whatever name. So they're worried and they're watching it happen, but they're unable to call it out. So I'm hoping that this talk that we had tonight is going to stir a fire, you know, in our hearts. And I'd love to hear our thoughts on the subject when we meet in January. And I'm open to questions, comments. If you've got anything from this call that we've had tonight, there's one thing that you would say you take with you as you leave tonight. What would that be? I would love to hear from you. If you got anything from tonight, if it has set something, awake in your mind, what would that be? So while we're on that, I remembered something else I was going to share tonight. And all of this, I had to dig deep because sometimes when you're parenting, you're just moving, just going. You're not looking back to, you know, you're not looking back. And it was, thank you for that comment. So I'll come to the comment. So yes, if you would take one thing away from tonight's conversation, what would that be? Drop it in the comments. Yeah, something that I realized was there was a time when I was, as a very young parent, everything, can be so serious and you're afraid of everything. Like, is this baby okay? Are they are they all right? Are they alive? You know how sometimes you could go to a crib and the child is sleeping and they're just still, and you're like, are they alive? And then there was this time that my mother-in-law, she dropped by to say hello to us. And she walked right in and she carried the baby and she smiled. It was such a wide smile. And I think in that moment, I realized I'm not even sure I had smiled at the baby that week. I was so obsessed with everything else that was going on that I hadn't had the time to just enjoy the baby and just enjoy, which was what she was doing. She saw the baby and it struck her and she enjoyed the baby so much that she smiled. And that moment, it got me thinking, wow, you can get so into it that you get so obsessed that you forget to enjoy the moment. And the moment passes. So I just wanted to mention that because she is part of my village. And so by doing that, she reminded me to do that more. And that's what the village does. And it's not really possible to do that from your iPad. It's not really possible to do that from the internet. Like, our internet friends are great. I've met so many people on the internet, I feel like I know them, but I know in my heart that I don't. But at the same time, we're looking at a future that is going to be more and more digital based. In some countries in the world already, we have people in relationships with AI personalities, people who are not real. They are AI personalities, and yet people wake up and they say, I want to see this person. I want to talk to that person. There's a possibility that the future will look like that. But still, if we begin to see and understand the reason why the village is important, I believe that it will change the way we parent and it will make us stronger. All right, so I have a comment here. It is, we have to be receptive to opinions from trusted sources. Even if the source is not trusted, we can learn. That is very key. Even if the source is not trusted, we can learn a thing or two. That is so true. Because sometimes as human beings, the moment we hear the source, it's like, I don't want to hear that, right? I don't want to hear that. Don't even tell me. You tell me I don't want to listen. Meanwhile, the person could have like something very, very important to say. Or the person has seen something that from their experience, they know what this is, and you don't. Or maybe you do, but you're like me, so into it that you couldn't step away and see, right? So thank you so much for that comment. All right, so uh, we're preparing for Christmas. I'm so excited. It's just a few days away. To be honest, I'm not fully decorated. I still have a lot of work to do, but I am learning to, you know, to not have the tree as full as I would typically have it. So let's see how that goes. So the next time we'll be meeting, it will be January 17th. I will put out some kind of notification about that. But in the meantime, you will see me on Instagram, on TikTok. I'm on Instagram at Biodun I'm on TikTok at B.Friday. And my website is still www.biodun.friday.com. Feel free to sign up to my email list. In February, there's going to be a boot camp of sorts, and it's going to be exciting. That's all I'm going to say. But for now, please follow me if you are not following me already. Subscribe to this channel, and I'd love, love, love to see how all of these things that we've spoken about tonight, how it turns something on, because I feel like conversation does that. Good conversation, it turns stuff on in our minds and makes us explore things like we've never explored them before. All right, everyone, my name is Bianca Frede. I'm a certified leadership coach, certified teen and adolescent coach, and I would love, love, love to hear more from you. You can always reach out to me. hi@biodun.friday.com is my official email. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you for joining. Thank you for all the comments. Good night.